Imagine waking up exactly when your body is ready.
No alarm clock, no appointments, and nowhere you have to be.
You sit up, stretch, and ask yourself a simple question. What should I do today?
For 99% of human history, this wasn't just a dream or a hypothetical scenario.
This was the reality every morning for approximately 300,000 years, and the answer to that question had nothing to do with the life you lead now.
The average person spends about 90,000 hours of their life working.
This means that roughly 1/3 of your waking hours are dedicated to work.
No entanto, durante a maior parte da nossa jornada como espécie, os empregos simplesmente não existiam.
There was no hiring, no salaries, no bosses, and no career paths to climb.
So what did people actually do all day?
Let's start with what we know for sure. In 1963, an archaeologist named Richard Lee conducted a study that would forever change our understanding of prehistoric life. He followed the daily lives of the Dobe Juhansi in Botswana, one of the few groups still living much as humans did before the invention of agriculture. He discovered that adults spent only about 2.5 days per week searching for food. That amounts to roughly 17 hours of effort per week.
For the rest of the time, they did whatever they wanted.
The most important point is that this pattern repeats itself everywhere researchers look. It happens with the Hadza in Tanzania, the Ache in Paraguay, and the Martu in Australia.
São ambientes completamente diferentes em continentes distintos, mas o resultado é o mesmo: cerca de 15 a 20 horas por semana dedicadas a atividades de sobrevivência. For comparison, you probably work twice as much.
Now, some of you might think these are modern peoples and wonder how we know that ancient humans lived the same way. That is a very fair question, and the answer is recorded in the bones.
When archaeologists compare the skeletons of ancient humans with those of the first farming populations, the difference is striking.
The farmers were shorter, and their bones showed clear signs of vitamin and nutrient deficiencies. Their teeth were riddled with cavities due to a diet based solely on grains. They suffered from spinal arthritis due to heavy, repetitive labor and died at a much younger age. In contrast, hunter-gatherer skeletons were taller and stronger, with much healthier teeth and less joint damage.
The bones tell a clear story. They did less repetitive physical work, not more than we do.
But the most fascinating evidence comes from an archaeological discovery that shouldn't even exist if survival were a constant, desperate struggle: art.
In 1994, explorers discovered the Chauvet Cave in southern France. Inside, there were paintings dating back roughly 30,000 years. They were drawings of horses, lions, and rhinoceroses created using techniques of perspective, shading, and movement.
That wasn't just a simple stick figure drawing.
It was sophisticated art that required a lot of skill, planning, and, above all, free time.
Someone spent hours, perhaps days, deep in a dark cave, using firelight to paint animals on the walls.
This wasn't about survival or food. It was done for beauty, for meaning, or simply for the sake of doing it. 100,000-year-old shell beads were found in Blombos Cave, South Africa. They were tiny holes made in seashells to be worn as jewelry.
The nearest coastline was 20 kilometers away.
Someone walked 40 kilometers round trip just to gather shells, then spent hours meticulously drilling each one with stone tools, all just to look more beautiful.
In 2008, researchers in Germany discovered a 40,000-year-old flute made from bird bone. It had 5 perfectly positioned finger holes. Whoever made this had a deep understanding of music and theory and spent a tremendous amount of time crafting the instrument. It wasn't for hunting or self-defense. It was for music.
These are not isolated discoveries.
Across Europe, Africa, and Asia, archaeological sites dating back 100,000 years are rich with evidence of decorative objects. These tools were crafted with far more detail than survival required, representing hours of focused effort with no immediate practical benefit. This was what people did when they weren't looking for food. They created,
decorated, and beautified.
Então, vamos tentar reconstruir como era dia típico.
You wake up at dawn.
Last night's fire still has glowing embers.
Someone is putting more wood on the fire.
You eat some leftover meat or fish from yesterday, or perhaps some nuts and fruit gathered the day before. Breakfast is a social occasion.
People chat and make simple plans for the day.
Not because they have to, but because it's just what humans do naturally.
Por volta do meio da manhã, pequeno grupo pode sair para caçar ou coletar plantas, mas o segredo é este: não se vai todos os dias.
If the hunt from 2 days ago was good and there's still food stored, you might not even leave the camp.
Você poderia passar a manhã inteira cuidando de suas ferramentas, afiando uma lança, tecendo cesto ou raspando o couro de animal para deixá-lo macio e pronto para uso.
This isn't work in the modern sense of the word.
There's no clock and no supervisor.
You do it because mastery matters, because being great at your craft earns respect, and because creating things of quality is fundamental to the human experience.
If there is a hunt, it's not the desperate chase you see in the movies. Humans are persistence hunters. We follow animals at a steady trot for hours until they overheat and collapse from exhaustion. We are the only species capable of doing this so well because we can sweat to regulate our body temperature while running, something most animals can't do. So we win through perseverance.
The hunt can take 3 to 6 hours.
Afterward, the animal is brought back and shared.
Everyone eats, and by early afternoon, the productive part of the day is basically over.
What follows is what people today find hardest to understand. Nothing and everything at the same time.
People relax, sit in the shade, and chat a lot.
They play with the children, groom one another, and strengthen their bonds of friendship.
They craft jewelry from shells or animal teeth, draw on stones, and take naps.
Anthropologist James Sussman noted that Juhoansi adults spend about 6 hours a day in what he called social time.
They aren't working or sleeping, they're just hanging out with other people, laughing and telling jokes. This happens because in a world without money, police, or written contracts, your survival depends entirely on your relationships.
If people don't like you, they aren't obligated to share their food with you just because you're hungry.
So you spend a lot of time on these connections.
Not to be productive, but because it's how humans stay human.
When the sun sets, something wonderful happens.
In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wiesner analyzed hundreds of hours of recorded conversations.
During the day, conversations were practical. Who saw animal tracks, which plants were ready for harvest, or complaints about someone who didn't share food properly.
But at night, around the fire, 81% of conversations turned into stories, myths about how the world began, legends of ancestors who did incredible things, and jokes that made everyone laugh. The researcher argues that it was there that human culture was truly born.
Gods, spirits, the past, and the future are things you only have the luxury of contemplating when your belly is full and you feel safe.
And people didn't sleep all in one go like we do now.
Historical records show that before artificial light, humans slept in 2 phases.
An initial sleep of about 4 hours, followed by an hour or 2 of wakefulness in total darkness, and then a second sleep of another 4 hours.
So the day went something like this: about 4 to 6 hours gathering food or making tools, roughly 6 hours of socializing, storytelling, and play, 8 hours of sleep in 2 phases, and the rest of the time spent simply resting, cloud watching, and existing, without the need to justify your life through productivity. But about 10,000 years ago, something changed radically.
Humans began planting seeds and domesticating animals.
This was the beginning of agriculture, and agriculture is a trap.
As soon as you start planting, you can feed more people.
The more people there are, the more food you need.
More food requires more planting.
Within a few generations, the population had grown so large that there was no turning back, as there were already too many people to survive solely on hunting and gathering.
You were stuck in the system. Agriculture required much more work. Plowing, planting, weeding, harvesting, storing, and defending the crops from animals and invaders. The evidence in the bones is clear. The first farmers worked much harder, ate worse, and died younger than the hunter-gatherers who preceded them.
Even so, the population continued to grow. And with such a large number of people, specialists emerged: toolmakers, potters, soldiers, religious leaders, and eventually specialized occupations.
The notion arose that your time belonged to someone else in exchange for resources.
When we built cities, humanity's original way of life vanished, replaced by schedules, obligations, and the need to work most of the time just to survive the system we created.
You spend 90,000 hours of your life working.
Your ancestors spent far less. You try to sleep all in one go and think that waking up at 2 in the morning is insomnia.
They slept in 2 shifts and used the hours in between to reflect.
You spend your life chasing an illusion of success, achievement, and wealth based on rules society made up.
They woke up every morning already free, already enough, and at peace, with nothing to prove to anyone.
They didn't need to be successful.
They were already living the life you spend your whole life working to achieve by the time you retire.
You create art whenever you have some free time after work.
They made art because they had the time, and that's what human beings do.
We aren't a different species, but we live so differently from how we did for 99% of our history that it almost feels like we are. We traded freedom for food security and leisure for population growth.
We traded time for productivity, and most of us have no idea what we gave up in return, because we never even knew that life existed.
So, what did you think of the video? Did you enjoy it?
So subscribe to the channel and hit the like button.
Watch the video appearing on your screen right now. I guarantee you'll like it too.